Hi everybody, my name is Richard Giguere and I'm here today to present on my evidence-based practice proposal. It's titled Prevention of Falls in Long-Term Care Residents Through the Use of the Otega Exercise Program. So just to give everybody a little bit of background on what I do, so I'm the Director of Nurses in a long-term care facility in Niantic, Connecticut. And I have to deal with all kinds of different issues in our facility. But one of the main issues that is a consistent thorn in my side is the number of falls that happen at our facility. Um, and so that's how this was the issue that I had identified that I wanted to focus on for this project. And here I list some of the things that it's every month we identify this as an issue at our QAPI meetings. It's consistently an alert in our QMs in terms of our our percentage compared to the national and the state percentages. We're always above those numbers. And we have done multiple things, all kinds of interventions that have minimal success. They might seem successful for a little bit, but then they seem to kind of peter out. So that's why I had identified. Here, I just did a little bit of a graph of how it's just to show how consistent the issue is. So I'm showing here is what our census typically runs at, and then which kind of stays sort of consistent, but you can see that as that consistency moves, so does the number of falls, and then also the number of repeat fallers that we have on a month. Here again is an example of how we're consistently above that threshold number. Our corporate parent company has a threshold of 12 percentage as being what we should be at, and you can see we never make that number. So here I'm outlining the process that I went through in developing this project, the development of the PCOT question, the article database search, my literature review, my plan for implementation of the project, reviewing that plan with the stakeholders at our facility, implementing that process, which we're going to get started on here shortly, and then the eventual review and analysis of the results. So here's the PCOT question that I eventually landed on, trying to analyze what it is that I was going to be working on. So do alert and oriented older adults in long-term care with history of falls within the last 12 months benefit from the use of strengthening and balance improvement programs and decreasing their number of falls over a period of 6 months. So here I'm sort of outlining a little bit my process for doing my search. I always started right off the bat with the advanced search engine. It definitely allows me a lot more choice and limiting what it is that I'm looking for. I always choose the appropriate time frame in terms of how far back I'm looking. I always choose a peer-reviewed selection, as well as I like to just look at the full text. I hate having to kind of search around to try to find the text for a particular article. And the two databases that I like to use are the CINAHL and the ProQuest. I find that Medline is very similar to the CINAHL one, so I kind of like using the ProQuest instead because it brings up a little bit more variety. And then I also, through narrowing the wording that I got from my PCOT question, I was able to get a little bit better results. So here I'm showing that originally I might have started with the long-term care residents. That kind of petered out to older adults and then just older. And then also with falls in 12 months, I ended up just using the word falls. And then with the strengthening and balance, it sort of led me to this Otega exercise program. And I was just using the word Otega. And with the use of those limited words, I was able to find a lot of very good articles to support this proposal. So here I'm going to go over my literature review and those articles that I ended up selecting to support my project. So my first article here, titled "The Effect of the Otega Exercise Program on Strength and Balance in Community Dwelling for Older Women." It was a study that assessed the effect of the Otega program on women over 80 years of age. It was assessed by a blind independent assessor prior to starting the study, and then again at weeks number 2, and then at the end of the study, which was 6 months later. He did identify that there was limitations in terms of the study ended up being truncated, which it should have gone for longer, but there ended up being some issue with nursing staff, and they had to cut the study short. And also the group was very small. They found that statistically it seemed to be insignificant, the results, but again, they kind of attributed that to the fact that there were so many limitations at the end of their study, and that they found that it probably needed a little bit more study to kind of either prove or disprove the advantages of using. This next article, Improving Older Adults' Balance and Preventing Falls. So this article it brought some good things to the table for me in terms of some ideas to think about, but really what the paper ended up being was a outline for a protocol for a different exercise program called Foolproof. There was no actual study done. It just laid out the process for how to implement this type of exercise program. Um, and really, in the end, it's kind of came across as almost a promotional piece for this Foolproof program. Um, so, but honestly, the way that it was kind of laid out played some role in some of the designing of what I wanted to do in my project. This next one was the Otega exercise program performed as group versus home training in fall-prone older adults, and it was a randomized controlled trial. This was a very well-designed program. It brought some other things to the table for me to think about in terms of assessments tools that they used to validate the results. So really everyone's looking to see if they can prevent falls, but there's also, you have to look at the exercise program and what it is that it's bringing to the table for these individuals in terms of increasing their strength and improving their balance. So by the use of these assessment tools, you're able to better determine whether there's true improvements happening and correlate that to maybe the improvements that are happening with falls, or maybe not in some cases improvement in falls, but that there are still other benefits to the program. And in the end, they chose to recommend this as a fall prevention strategy. This fourth article was the qualitative study that I chosen to add to my literature review. It looked at gender and how that played a role in exercise preference or motivators. They found that it didn't really play any role in terms of the gender, but they did find that that there were important things that they could garner from this study that would show them the importance of keeping people motivated and moving along with these programs, and some of the things that they could do to help design programs that were appealing intrinsically to the individuals that were involved with it. So I thought that this definitely brought some good points of information to the table. In my fifth article, the effectiveness of targeted exercise interventions on reversing older people's mild balance dysfunction was another randomized controlled trial, another very well designed program. They ended up having a much larger study group to analyze. They also did find that I think it's proportional. The larger the group, the larger the dropout rate, and they felt that that really kind of maybe influenced what was going on here. But they did also find that it was effective in increasing strength and in decreasing falls. And they also had stipulated that maybe using this in a group setting may also help because it'll help with increasing compliance as opposed to having someone just do it at home and maybe kind of having to, self-motivate themselves by being in a group. That might help. So here is my plan for implementation. My study group are going to be long-term care residents in my facility, alert and oriented enough to follow directions. And also they should have the ability to understand the consent process. They'll also need to have had at least one fall in the last 12 months to be included in the program. And then the assessment of the program, we're going to use those assessment tools that were developed and talked about in one of the articles that I had chosen. We are going to use the Otega exercise program as the basis for our strengthening and balance improvements. We're going to do it in group settings, and then we're going to do a reassessment with the tools on a monthly basis. And I'm also going to be tracking and recording the falls and the demographics of those falls. And then we're going to go for 6 months, and then we're going to reevaluate the data. So I presented this to the stakeholders. In this case, I went to our building administrator and had a meeting with her and discussed the program. And then I also met with the rehabilitation department manager and discussed this. They were both had very good feedback and had some suggestions about how and who we might be able to include in this study already. And then I've met with the rest of the rehab department and ended up coming up with some plan on how we're going to collaborate on this endeavor. The planning was initiated, and we're going to be having monthly follow-up meetings to discuss the program and its results. So we're planning on starting in June and running through November. We've already have 5 residents that we found that are potentially eligible, meet criteria for this, and there may be a few others that we're looking at right now. We're evaluating the consent process and whether we're going to need to use that. And because of the fact that we're going to be tracking data that we've already done, but the use of the assessment tools may be different than what is baseline for some of these residents. The assessment tools are selected, and I've designed a recording Excel spreadsheet in order to keep track of all the data. So the review and analysis of the data will be ongoing in the program and done on an ongoing basis. We're going to be looking at the level of strength and balance, as well as the number of falls and the circumstances around those falls. We're going to evaluate the results of these and talk about them on a monthly basis at our QAPI meeting. And then once we're all done with this, and if it's successful or not, I'm going to have a meeting with our other facilities in our district and go over these results. Here are my references for the articles that I use. Thank you everyone for listening to my presentation, and have a good day.